I'm RJ Grimm of Froliberty and Mississippi Coast TV. Today we have a special guest, Big Dave, Mr. David Singletary himself, who is running for governor. Good morning, sir.
Governor of the state of Mississippi.
Hey, hopefully.
Thank you for having me on today.
Oh, thank you for
Pleasure to
sitting
be
down.
here.
Thank you for sitting down.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Well, I've been watching you on Facebook and seeing you all over the place on the news. It looks like you're garnering quite a bit of attention, sir. How do you think?
I don't know if that's good or bad, but I guess any attention is good.
Okay.
Creating awareness, trying to educate people, and lo and behold, the good Lord willing, be governor of the state of Mississippi to legalize marijuana for every Mississippian in the state.
Okay, outstanding, outstanding. You had a couple of propositions that you were working on a little bit earlier. Can you tell us about the progress and how they did?
The initiative I had listed was a ballot initiative 63 for the recreational cannabis for the state of Mississippi, be fashioned and tailored something similar to Colorado's recreational legislation that they have on the books, and we were not able to obtain the required amount of signatures to have it listed on the ballot. The deadline was back January 5th, I believe, on having the required amount of signatures for the state in order to get it listed on the well, this would have been for the upcoming 2019 ballot, so we could have been voting on recreational marijuana in 6 months from now.
Okay. All right. Well, I can't imagine you have stopped. So what do you have going right now in that kind of realm?
Currently, medical marijuana 2020 has BI 65 listed for the medical cannabis industry, which is highly restrictive. But while I was collecting signatures to get recreational cannabis legal, somebody said, well, even if you get it legal, the governor's still not going to sign off on it. So I said, well, what does it take to be governor of the state of Mississippi? And the requirements are 1,000 signatures and $1,000 and a letter of intent. So I said, well, hell, I'm already getting signatures for legalization of cannabis. I might as well get signatures for me being on the ballot for governor while I'm at it. So in doing so, I acquired the 1,000 signatures that is required to be on the ballot, and I had, luckily God had blessed me, and I had $1,000 that I could pay to get listed on the ballot. So now I find myself in the middle of a governor's race for the state of Mississippi to legalize marijuana for every Mississippian, but I can't be on the Republican and I can't be on the Democratic platform because they do not support the pot legalization of pot platform. Okay. So I'm having to run independent, which is totally contrary. It's the first official to be running as an independent for governor for the state of Mississippi. So hopefully we can move toward a three-party system in this state and get fair and adequate and representative sample of the people, because right now you only have about 900,000 to 1 million people that turn out to vote in Mississippi, which is only 1/3 of the populace. So it's not a very representative sample of the citizenship for the state. So we need a more diverse, a more representative government that will address all the concerns of the citizens.
Okay, well, in keeping with that theme, is there something that your campaign brings that the other campaigns do not to address that diversity?
Most of my supporters are handicapped and disabled.
Okay.
You know, and the handicapped and the disabled, they haven't felt represented in the politics. You know, Mississippi is mainly the rich people and affluent people of Mississippi control the politics. You know, okay. Mississippi is a poverty-stricken and predominantly agricultural state, but the current representation does not represent that. Majority of the politicians are lawyers also. It's not a diverse representation of the scope of the economic scale of Mississippi. So What I am bringing to the table is a diverse representation of the populace, which you don't presently have, and which the current government does not represent in the state.
Okay. Well, when you become governor, and I'm sure that's a hope of yours, when you look at our legal system, what is Big Dave going to do for those sitting in our jail system as far as rights about why they were convicted? What do you think your platform or what you'd be able to do?
I'm gonna probably forgive or expunge about 10,000 people's charges when I get elected, as far as possession and intent to distribute charges. Now, you would think convicted felons with a record would jump on board with my campaign to get their charges expunged and their reputations exonerated here in the state of Mississippi. Now, as far as other political reform, I'm the only candidate talking about term limits.
Okay. All right.
Term limits seem to be a problem in the political process. You got incumbents laid up in the state capitol for over 40 years.
Okay.
And do not generate any new ideas for the state. They're just complacent and stagnated. And Mississippi has been in last or close to last place my entire life. Now, you would think if we had adequate leadership at the state capitol, then we could compete and be competitive with the rest of the country and not be held back by our present leadership.
Okay. All right. Well, that being said, one of the hits, so to speak, that Mississippi has is education. Okay. Our quality, drawing good teachers, keeping good teachers. Do you have a plan to address that?
Revenue, baby.
Okay. All right.
It takes money, baby. You can't spend it if you don't got it. That's what the main problem is now, and that's the main difference between me and the other candidates for governor. I got a brand new revenue stream.
Okay.
They don't have nothing. They got to rob Peter to pay Paul right now. The state budget's around $6.4 billion, and every penny of that gets spent.
Okay.
And they didn't even fund education this year, I don't believe. They were talking about a pay raise, and teachers got maybe $1,000 extra a year. Oh, we're talking about bringing the Mississippi teachers' pay raise up to the top 50% of the country. Now, I don't know what exactly the national southeastern average is, but my goal would be to bring the teachers up to the top 50% of the country. And along them lines, we got to get the retired people more energized and back into the future of the kids. I mean, some of these retired people, they could take their afternoons and spend it at the high school mentoring young adults and keeping them out of jail, you know, and share from their experience to the younger generation. It's a missed opportunity right now. You got old retired people sitting at home being lonely when they could be at your neighborhood high school mentoring the kids. Keep the kids there till 5 p.m. in the afternoon till the parents get off work. It's burdensome and a hardship for the parents to make arrangements for their kids to get home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon while they're still at work. So one of the main driving factors in education for me is to educate the kids. You know, you got to inform them of what's going on so they can make proper and good choices for their future. That would reduce abortion rates and teen pregnancies right there. For the high school kids to have somebody to mentor them in the afternoon after their classes are all gone. And one other aspect of that is we need to have a sex, drugs, and hip hop class taught after all the rest of school is over to help these children prepare for the choices that are going to be confronted them. Because most of the hardship in growing up in the teenage years is peer pressure. And they're under a lot of pressure to dress right, look right, talk right, act right. they got a lot of different shoes and molds they got to fill, and that's a lot of pressure we're putting on our young people now.
Okay.
If we had some older people in the afternoon to mentor these kids, to tell them what they've been through and to identify with their experience and provide some empathy to the scenario, then we would find out that we have a lot better prepared children for the future. Because believe it or not, we're all getting old, and we're going to need the young people to take care of us as we get older. But right now, with all the millennials moving to Colorado and the brain drain occurring in Mississippi, we all just going to get old, and we're not going to have any young people to take care of us. So we need to educate them in order to keep them here in the state.
Okay, well, you talked a little bit about the brain drain here in Mississippi. We've had, at least in the coastal, from my experience, we've had some stellar graduates. How do we keep that talent here in Mississippi? Or how do we attract talent from around the country here to our state?
It's all about the revenue, baby.
Okay. All right.
It takes money to pay for the education. With legalized cannabis, we're trying to change the persona and the perception of the state so we can attract the bright minds from the rest of the country instead of watching our bright minds go across the state boundaries. Now, one issue I heard raised about the brain drain problem is that a lot of the kids are going out of state to seek their college education, and once they get out of state, they stay out of state. And a lot of them that go to college and schools here in the state will remain. So the main thing is making Mississippi more attractive. I mean, Lord,
We're making our school system or our
changing the
college?
persona of
Okay.
the state is the perception is what I find, because I travel the country and I've traveled the country in the past, and you're stigmatized and stereotyped as soon as you tell them you're from Mississippi and the rest of the country. So,
Okay.
and that's just because of our leadership has let us down, and we've been last for so long, and they're stuck in a rut, and they just think they got to vote Republican every year, or the whole world's gonna go to hell. You know, if they don't want to vote Republican, they're just stuck in that same stereotype, which has got us in last position. They need to quit living in denial and do what's right by the citizenry of the state.
Okay. A lot of people talk about the corruption and misspending of our present government. Have you looked at something about line vetoes and going in, line by line, looking at our budget and going, you don't need that as governor? Do you think that you should have the power, or would you demand that power be handed over to you?
Line item veto would be nice to have if you want to single out certain items in the budget to address. And of course, I believe in complete transparency. As a public servant, you have to have complete transparency, or either they're going to create rumors about you and talk behind your back nowadays. So more transparent you are, the better off you are in nowadays politics. But what was the question again? I'm sorry.
About the corruption and overspending of our present administration.
Yeah. Transparency. Phil Bryant, he cut the budget a couple of 3 times while he was in office, so because they didn't have the revenue projections correct. The revenues weren't as great one year as they are next year. You got to understand, the state's got to balance its budget every year.
Okay.
And right now they're spending every penny they got of the $6.4 billion. But as you pointed out, corruption is rampant throughout the political system. Case in point being Mr. Epps, who was just over the Mississippi Department of Corrections, got fired and got caught embezzling, and not so much embezzling, but giving favors to contractors for support of the prison system. Now he got caught with his hand in the pot, in the till. Now if it'd been complete transparency, then he wouldn't have had anything to worry about. I mean, that's just it. Do your job you're elected to do. Don't steal from the public. Give them a good day's work for a good day's pay. You know, that's the way I was brought up. So transparency is a must, and we do have to get the corruption out of politics. But in order to do that, we're gonna have some political reform. You ain't gonna let them lay up in there for 40 years. You're gonna enact term limits. You're not gonna let them become a lobbyist after they get out of office. And you're gonna give them the same benefits that me and Joyce share.
Okay.
You know, they're not entitled to any special perks or packages. I mean, they're the ones that decided to run for office. They're the ones that decided to be a public servant, so they should forego their egos and concentrate on the good of the whole of the state.
Okay, all right.
Instead of showing favoritism to the lobbyists that get them reelected every year.
Okay. Another kind of criticism for Mississippi as a whole is inconsistent kind of infrastructure. You go from town to town, and some have good roads, some have good sewer systems, some have decent schools. 4 towns over, it's a wreck. I mean, same money. I mean, we're all going into the same pot, but infrastructure is inconsistent. You never know what you're going to get. How does Big Dave address that?
Infrastructure.
Roads.
Money,
sewers.
baby, money.
All right.
Y'all got to understand, I'm bringing a $6 billion industry to the state. I'm doubling the GDP of the state overnight. We're infusing over 30,000 new jobs in the state. We're increasing tourism over 80% in the state. Now, as far as the infrastructure goes, it takes the money. They say that the lottery bill and the internet tax that was passed special session a year ago, that's going to generate about $200 million. Well, guess what? The annual upkeep of Mississippi roads and bridges is $400 million. So we're not even covering the current upkeep, much less any projected future bridge repairs and road repairs and brand new construction in the future. Now with me, I was raised to have a preventative maintenance schedule is what they call it.
Okay.
So in other words, you take care of the problem before it becomes a problem.
Okay.
So you don't have to shut down 500 bridges statewide. And now to get back to your point, it's all about revenues. Now the counties that decide to go wet and decide to legalize cannabis, guess what? They're gonna have additional revenues for the infrastructure improvements.
Okay.
Now guess what? The poor counties that don't legalize cannabis, don't have the additional revenues coming in. So they still got to rob from Peter to pay Paul, and they got to prioritize their expenses. But we do need to prioritize our expenses also, even if we got a bunch of revenue, because there's no problem with putting some of the revenue back into the rainy day fund. If y'all don't remember, the credit rating of Mississippi was reduced while Phil Bryant was in office, and while Tate Reeves was lieutenant governor. Our credit rating was reduced, which means we got to pay a higher interest rate on our debt. Now, most of the way you attract new industry and new jobs is to the state is you put together a package to attract that industry. And part of that package is tax credits. And part of that package is, yeah, we'll put you in a new bridge and we'll put you in an access road to your facility. And as such, we brought in Nissan. And we brought in the Continental Tire plant up in Hinds County. That's $1.3 billion. But at the same time, to bring them in, we had to give away the bank, so to speak.
Right.
We had to flow bond issues to cover the infrastructure improvements. Well, now the interest payment on the bond issues has become a major expense in the state's annual budget. As such, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're taking away from education to pay for the improved infrastructure. With my ideas, it's brand new revenue we've never seen before, never had before, and not going to show up on your end of the year tax bill.
Okay, well, why don't we address your revenue source, period. How does your implementation of complete legalization, how do you address law enforcement, like their training and whatever? Because this is something that law enforcement hasn't seen before, or haven't dealt with. I mean, they've dealt with the illegal aspect of it, but now we have a whole legal. Okay, I get stopped, officer, I have a med card. I smell marijuana, it's all right, officer, I have a med card. I mean, what kind of training are you looking at as far as law enforcement is concerned?
we're going to have to learn from the other states, and there's enough years gone by to where there are some vertical studies that have been conducted and showing, and in most of the states that are legal, I don't believe the smell of marijuana anymore is a probable cause to be pulled over and searched. The police are going to have to get used to it, just like they got used to alcohol not being prohibited anymore, you know. And most of the conflicts in today's society is caused by you trying to tell people what to do with their body.
Okay.
And as such, that's how the war on drugs was first created. How can we sit by and watch somebody waste their life on drugs? Well, the current 100 years war on drugs has shown us is how can you not sit by and let them waste away on drugs.
Okay.
I mean, you can send them to rehab 4 or 5 times and maybe they get better, maybe they don't. So as far as the implication for the police, I'm making the police job easier.
Okay.
I'm giving the police a raise. I'm no longer making cannabis an issue of controversy between the police and the public. Do you understand?
Yeah.
The police are not intended to, or nor have they ever been intended to, be babysitters for the public. They're law enforcement officers, and they are here to enforce the law. Now, when you've had a law on the books for over 100 years that you still have not achieved your goal, and still have not solved any problems, then you need to take a good hard look at that law. Because laws were made to be changed. And that's one thing so great about the democratic system and the initiative process is if the people are dissatisfied with the laws the lawmakers are making, it gives you a chance. It gives you a choice that you've never had before in your lifetime in this state of Mississippi to take action and to pursue the changes that you think are necessary for the state.
You're watching MCTV, Mississippi Coast TV.